where like it can't all be hard work all the time. Like you have to know like the technique at this point has to be like good enough or okay, because now I need to start doing this other stuff with it.
Yeah.
I would obsess like with technique over and over again, and then realize like, gosh, I am just never gonna paint like these people.
Yeah. How are you, man?
Pretty good. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. Finally, nice to meet you.
Nice to
And
meet you.
yeah, and to be able to talk with you, it's a big honor, man.
I appreciate that. Thanks, man.
Yeah, yeah. Long time since we met via Instagram, right? I remember making a drawing for you maybe a year ago or so.
Gosh, that might have been. I bet that was like 2 years ago.
Or 2 years ago, yeah.
3 years. It's been a while.
Yeah.
It's a good drawing. I love that one, man.
Yeah, thank you. It was great doing it. Yeah. It was hard to find, reference pictures of you, but I managed.
Yeah, I try to make sure there's hardly any in existence, but
yeah.
if you can find one, that's cool.
Yeah. I saw that. I can see that. So, okay, so the idea of this talk is to basically to get to know you a bit more. Obviously, we are talking about art, about your process, your creative process. I'm trying to find a bit more than what you show, on your Instagram. I always wanted to get a bit further with what I see. So if you have any doubt, anything you want to ask me or to say before we start, um, you can always tell me.
Okay, awesome.
So the first thing I wanted to ask you is, do you have any academic training? Did you go to art school? How did you started with all this?
I mean, not really. My dad's an artist, and so I saw him a lot growing up doing that, seeing him create things. So I felt normal, or I was compelled to do that also. But not really any training. I had I guess art in high school, and then I went to college to be an art teacher, but I took mostly art classes, hardly any like drawing or painting classes, because when you're looking to be a teacher, you have to take like sculpture and ceramics and just literally every kind so you can teach it. So I was kind of in a world of no specifics, just doing a little bit of everything. And so I never really focused on art or doing anything anything original or interesting until just a few years ago, because I was just stuck in either kind of academic stuff. But I never really got training. I went to museums all the time.
Yeah.
And or I'd buy art books and just try to find out whatever I could. I'd Google stuff. I mean, I remember, gosh, that when I first wanted to learn how to paint, this is probably going to date me, but I was trying to YouTube any videos that I could.
Yeah.
And so pretty much everything I learned how to paint was from two videos, Sean Cheatham video and a Jeremy Lipking video.
Yeah.
They were both like 8 minutes long. They were super sped up. And I was like, gosh, how are they doing this? This is like magic. But I tried to slow it down and just be like, okay, this is the process. This is how it works. Because I mean, the more I messed with things, the more I was confused by it all. So I really spent so much time just making mistakes and coming around to finally whatever this is, I guess. Whatever style is now, I don't know.
Yeah, but I guess I mean, of course, there is some specific information we have to know how to mix, I don't know, colors or use materials. But I think I mean, part of the process is to spend time and hours doing it, right? It's not that you're going to read some, I mean, you saw two great videos, but after that, I guess you spend lots of hours. It's not that you say, okay, I understand everything, and you go and paint a portrait like you do, right?
Right. Yeah, it really is. Like I think for so many years I wanted to be an artist, and then you kind of just wait for inspiration, or at least I was, where I was like, man, I'm gonna have a good idea one of these days. And then after a while, you just have to just start creating stuff. And then off of you just working, you get ideas based off of that. Like I never would have guessed my work now or then would have looked anything like. I could have never planned to get there. It just kind of happens where you start one style and you're like, I'm going to do this with the eyes. And then like,
Yeah.
oh, what if I did this with the next one? And then the next one and the next one. And by the end of everything, you're probably, 20 little ideas into something, and you can fine tune that into your style, or even take 2 or 3 of those things. So it really, and I never post, or not anymore, any of the stuff that I try that doesn't work. It's probably interesting more interesting if I would actually, but yeah, there's just enough stuff where enough missteps to where, you eventually figure out, that's not really my style. I can't do it. And B, this is more fun anyways. Cause
Yeah.
At least for me, you hit a point where like, it can't all be hard work all the time. Like, you have to know like the technique at this point has to be like good enough or okay. Cause now I need to start doing this other stuff with it.
Yeah.
I would obsess with technique over and over again, and then realize like, gosh, I am just never going to paint like these people.
Yeah.
And which is fine because those people are already out there and they already exist. So anything I would do would just be a copy of that, like I don't want to be a 3rd or 5th or even 20th tier Richard Schmid student.
Yeah.
Like, God, his stuff is great, but as it trickles down, like you can only look like you're trying to be like him.
Yeah, that's interesting because I always, I think the same thing. Like we artists, a lot of us, we fall into the trap, of trying to always be better on technique, like how to render better an eye or how to do the flesh better, the flesh tones. And we try to keep going over and over the same stuff and we could be, I don't know, worrying about ideas or what we are trying to say, or as you said, like just to have fun and not stress out because of the, I don't know, the highlight of the eye and the reflection and
right.
And actually also, people that see art, like the people that appreciate and consume art, they're not all artists. So there's a point in which maybe you and me or other artists, we understand the little changes you are doing to your work, but most people, maybe they miss out those little things you are, working that much,
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's definitely like, it's kind of this concept that I used to think about, like when people would say, man, I'm just having an off day, my hair looks weird today. I'm like, man, I have no clue, but you can notice all the subtleties of what in you doesn't work. No one else is going to notice that. And then to go back to your point, I don't know if most people really focus on things that tightly as far as, like not everybody's going to be like, gosh, are you sure that's the color of the reflected light there? And, and then it comes down to like, when I used to paint murals, I'd be like, gosh, I want to freehand this, but I know it wouldn't look good unless as if I were to project it, from 30 feet away and make it real huge. And that pride element of me of like, no, I can't project it. And then I'm like, you know what? The guy that owns this building that's paying for this does not care how I get this done, as long as it looks as good as the, whatever I showed him for the image. So I kind of go back to that of like, it's kind of like, as I'm looking at your guitar there, it's kind of like a lot of musicians and guitarists play for other guitarists. They want to be like, man, I'm worried about these guys that are just going to rip me up on the comments because, they own such nice guitars and they know everything about guitar, but who gives a shit about that, right? Like, when I love trolling those images, those comments when I see a guitar video and they're like, oh, that sucked. He missed that 3rd note on the Mixolydian scale. It's like, it's like, oh, cool, man. That's so, and this is probably like a dentist that owns, $80,000 worth of guitars. That's no good, but no one tells him that. And he wears this Hawaiian t-shirt and cargo and plays concerts. It's like, who gives, like, these people that obsess over this technique and create this like kind of cult bubble of like, oh, so I gave up on technique about 4 years ago.
I
And
mean,
said, you know what? I'm just going to do whatever, because I really felt, a slave to the rules of like, it's got to be an oil and it's got to be like this and it's got to like that. And I don't do any of that stuff anymore. And it's very, there's a lot of freedom in it. There's, no one's really ever been like, I mean, most people don't really ask like, what's your technique? They used to, they don't anymore, which is great. But nobody asks now, or no more, no less. So it's kind of like, no one cares, no one notices, like no one. So that, to me, that's kind of a compliment that people aren't like, what medium is this? They're like, oh shit, is that a whatever? And they think more about the image. So,
yeah, but it's interesting because you're saying like, you say I gave up on technique, but your technique is great. I mean,
thank you.
like yeah, I mean, it's I have here I'm looking a lot of your paintings here right now in a monitor, on a screen, and I mean, the technique is great. And yeah, I think it's a difficult thing, and I fall very, very often into this trap, of trying to, as you said, with the guitar players, to work better for other artists, so that when they see the work, I think it's tough to be able to, go away from that. It's like, yeah, I don't know. I try to fight with that. I don't know if I'm there yet, but one day maybe.
Yeah, it's a process. Like it took me some time. Not until did I feel like, I don't know, you feel kind of like, I don't know, when you get into Instagram first, you kind of, it's cool to find like-minded artists. It's cool to like, you kind of partner up with people, right? You got your like 15 people that you're like associate with and you're often featured with, or, do group shows with or something. And then over time, people kind of you just kind of drift away. I think, I definitely, there's a lot of good friends and a lot of good connections that I've made from that. And then you kind of have like your secondary people. But I think ultimately from like that group on to a lot of the other artists, once I started doing those scrape away videos and kind of the stuff I do now, I think people really just, they kind of kicked me out of the cool kid art group, which is fine. So that's where I was like, it's easy for me now to not care, because I'd look back at a lot of their stuff and be like, well, that's fine. I'm not super blown away by what you're doing either, or whatever. And so it kind of forced me, most of deep down in my heart is bitterness and
Yeah.
So like when things like that would happen, I'd be like, cool, great. You guys don't like it? I'm going to go even harder in this direction.
Yeah. I think,
because I mean, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, like, I think not giving a fuck, it's a good thing, if you're not doing harm, that's perfect,
It's with art, it's the only thing I've realized, like if, because so long when I first got on, like, yeah, I would constantly check in with my art buddies and be like, hey, I just tried something new. What do you think of this? And they'd be like, cool, man, or whatever. And I'd be like, gosh, I'm being so like needy and annoying. And then once I was just like, man, I don't give a shit. I don't give a shit about, and I'm not being rude about it, but like at the same time, like I was really concerned about what other artists thought about my stuff. And now I don't care even slightly. And that the feeling of that is so empowering. And it hasn't made a difference at all in anything. Because, most other artists don't buy your shit anyways, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, what are you missing out on? Is a couple likes that don't mean too much, like. So to kind of be rid of anybody's, and again, I have my like 5 or 6 art buddies that, we kind of cut our teeth on social media together and became friends and all that. And but we don't really check in on art at all anymore. It's mostly just friend stuff.
So yeah, so we're talking here about mostly about social media and how we are reacting to what's going on there. So the question is, do you think your work has changed or has been changed by social media, especially Instagram, I think, right? Like
Yeah, I mean,
like it has an influence on your creations. And the second question would be, is it okay to be influenced by a number of likes from people you don't know?
so I guess first question, yeah, I mean, it's definitely influenced things a lot. You know, it can be like, you know, good and bad, right? On some level, you know, it definitely changed my life when a lot of those videos were around, and when people, you know, when you sell things to people or it's posted somewhere, and like, you know, it definitely, yeah, it definitely affects you. It can, and then, you know, the likes, you know, it's definitely a double-edged sword for sure. You know, like it's nice to know, and because, you know, I only post stuff that I feel confident and like, which even then I still don't like it. But I realize, okay, this is as good as this is going to get. I feel like I can put my name behind it, then I'll post it.
Yeah.
So it's nice when like people like it, and then it validates that, yeah, this, okay. So there's a few of us that think this is okay. But when it doesn't go well, I mean, I know the cool hip art thing to say is, man, I don't care about that. But you know, it's hard to be like, you get a handful of likes, and then you post something that's new and different and maybe exciting or something to you, and then you get like 300% less likes. It's like, oh shit, that's the market regulating my new style. Or,
Oh
you know,
yeah.
it's hard to not take, you know, like, again, people can have all these answers of, I'm just going to do whatever I like. It's like, that's fine. But I know deep down people are like, shit, how come they didn't like that one?
Yeah,
What's wrong?
yeah, yeah. I mean, like, the like you said, like the cool answer is to say, "Oh no, I just do what I want. I don't care. I don't look at the comments and at the likes. I don't I." But that's not true, Like, for at least for me, I don't know. Maybe there are people that are so uh, I don't know if the word is secure of themselves or self. How you say, like they are, yeah, how do you say, confident
Yeah.
about themselves, or I don't know if that's the way it works. But with me, what happens a lot is that the drawings or paintings I think are going to be the best there are the worst. Like like I have I don't know,
Oh
a
yeah.
drawing. Like I have a drawing and I say, oh yes, I'm going to post this. I love it. It's amazing. I don't know, whatever. Uh, and I post it and nothing. And there are other times where I'm not so sure about the quality of this work, or maybe I'm like, oh, it has a mistake there and proportion, or maybe, and then people like love it, and it's like, okay, I don't understand anything no more, like.
Yeah, it's interesting. I almost feel like there's this, the closer something is to exact, or something that the closer is to a photo, the Instagram world is not as interested,
Hmm.
right? So there's kind of this bell curve of like, man, if you're like super realistic, man, we sure think that's awesome, and oh my gosh, but if it's perfect, it's
Hmm.
almost like you won't even notice it. Like, it's just a photo. Next, next, next.
Yeah.
But I feel like when, you know, anytime I've kind of gone off the wall and done something weird or had a weird technique thing, or yeah, when you look at other artists, and there'll be something off, people gravitate towards that. They're like, ooh, that's weird. That got my attention. So it's more of like, whatever. But so I think, because I mean, I've seen a handful of artists that are just the worst on Instagram, and like, they'll have so many likes, so many followers, and I'm like, I just cannot understand this, and that makes me sound like, you know, a Midwestern dummy. But I'll look at these and I'm like, I literally don't understand how these are getting tens of thousands of like, but that's me. But it reminds me that, the world likes weird. The world doesn't like perfection. The world doesn't, like they want their paintings to look like paintings, and I think, and I think color, I feel like drawings for me always played a second fiddle for everything. Like I love charcoal drawings. I love doing that. But I think the world views that as like, oh, that's just a sketch. And that's just and it's like some type of lower form of something. So it always gets less attention. And I never felt that was fair, because I always felt like those are like some of the best things you can do. So I understand what you're talking about with that. It's just interesting. And so that's where you can go a little too far with tracking social media and like trying to chase what people like. Because you'll see that there's people that like, oh wait, what are we doing now? Up close eyeballs and up close whatever and this and that, and then they just go for it. And you can just see, I'll see, I'm not on Instagram as much these days, but like when I look, I'll, I check out what other artists are doing, and there's a lot of people that's, there's lots of people to copy and lots of people to, like you can just see the trickle down of Jenny Seville and Alex Konevsky,
yeah.
And that stuff is cool, man. But by the time you see the fifth iteration of like the fifth derivative copy of it, like the fifth generation, you're like, man, I don't like this anymore. And then even when you go back and look at the original artist, you're like, oh, that just looks like a better version of these crappier ones.
Yeah,
I feel like an asshole in the snob saying that, but that's how that works. Like there's a time when like you'd see a Phil Hale painting and you'd be like, oh my God, that's the greatest thing I've ever seen. And then by, again, the fifth generation of someone who Googled an antique photo of something and just painted it monochromatic and gave it a super weird title, it's like, it takes away from what the original person was doing. Or any Adrian Guinea or Genie, however you say that, like just people track trends and they try to match that, and it works. Like second generation of those copycats, they're great, and it works, and I love it. Right? It still gets me, but by the time it's the fifth, it's like,
yeah.
So I try to just stay out of that world all the way, and if it even looks close to that, I get rid of it.
I guess that's one of the low or disadvantages of this, huge box where we are seeing far too much from other artists and from anyone.
Right.
We are like watching too much stuff of other people that maybe we don't even care about, and that's how we are, like you said, like watching like fifth generation of Jenny Saville working again with the flesh and with the skin and naked women, and it's but on the other hand, it's like where we have to take ideas and influence from somewhere.
Yeah, and totally. I know that my stuff is not terribly original either, and I'm sure I've ripped off a bunch of stuff because every once in a while people are like, hey, that reminds me of this, and I'm like, oh shit, I'll Google it. And I'm like, I've never even heard of this guy, but god damn it. And then so like done with that style.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I realize I'm sounding like an asshole and a snob here, but that's just how my thoughts go as far as like style wise. Like I don't want to be in any kind of group anymore.
Yeah. No,
And
I think that's great, and I think one of the keys for having something at least a bit more original than like one of the keys is to be influenced by a series or a group of artists, and not just Sargent or just, I don't know, Jenny Saville or just Phil Hale, or like to
right.
have several influences. I have this guy that every time he finds like a piece of my drawing that it's influenced by another artist, that which it probably is, he writes a comment down like saying, hey, this looks just like, or this guy, or oh, you're working great, sounds like this other guy. And I'm like, it probably is similar. I'm probably influenced, of course, like I'm guilty as charged, but why, there are a lot of people here in social media that are, like writing down like shitty comments and bad stuff. And if you don't like it, don't follow, or say nothing, or keep scrolling, like,
Right.
you know
Yeah, there's definitely that watchdog mentality of like,
no.
I appreciate, because a lot of people will post on things if people have like tried to copy my stuff or have reposted something of mine. They'll say this sure looks like us, Blake Neubert, and
Yeah.
and I appreciate their energy and what they're trying to do, but at the same time, it's like, whatever the image is, it's like, well, technically, yeah, they did, but I also ripped that off from this person who ripped it off from this person, and
Yeah.
this is from The Office, so just in general, that's not mine, like, or whatever. So like, I definitely, I appreciate people's energy, but I also understand that like so much of doing art at the very beginning is total thievery. It's studies, it's until you find your own thing. So, and that's where social media really lets artists down, is that, you can see these waves of like interest from people, right? So, and I always joke with people that like, you can't post 5 of the same series in a row because people lose interest.
Hmm.
And then I lose interest too, because I'm trained by that. So if I see the same artist, like the same thing over and over again, I don't even notice it sometimes.
Yeah.
So what, if Andy Warhol, for example, was on his social media, he probably would have stopped at the Marilyn Monroe and Campbell Stone, like, well, people are getting sick of this, so I better try something new. So it doesn't really allow an artist to go 20 years
Hmm.
with one style and fully see the parameters of what it can do, and they're just stuck with, well, I think people are done with it. So it really speeds up careers or styles exponentially, to where either you've got to be stuck and say, this is what I do this one thing, and just be okay with it and roll with it. But if you're kind of tracking where you want to go and where your audience wants you to go, so you got to find the balance there. But even then, you yourself, I can't do the same thing over and over again. It's just,
Yeah.
for me, it's like, well, what's next? I can't keep doing this. So that's probably what social media has influenced for me. So I'm, you know, uh, part of the problem there. But yeah, it's interesting to see how it affects everything. But it's I don't understand the negativity behind when people, because man, one of the so I when I first started doing those scrapeaway videos, they would post them on just all over the place, places that weren't even like art type mediums, and I'd read the comments and people would just shit all over them. And some of them were just so rude that it was funny, but at the same time, I was like, okay, that's cool. I got a reaction that someone hated it enough to make a comment about it, which that's something,
Yeah.
but at the same time, it's just like, really, that's how you want to spend your time, huh? But
Yeah.
so I really, years ago, I heard all the worst things you could ever hear about yourself once those videos started going around. So now there's virtually nothing anybody could say to me that would like change any way I feel about how I do anything after that, like that little time period of how
Yeah.
volatile that was. So that was a good lesson, but at the same time, like, I don't think it made me any better or worse of an artist. It was just like this kind of growth thing of like, wow, there's a lot of assholes in the world and they all watched that video and they didn't like it.
Yeah. So you were saying, you were talking about series of paintings, and I mean, you have a very distinguished. You have like the emojis, which are fantastic. You have the awake as fuck series. You have a very, I don't know how to say, very defined series. So how do you manage to do you think like 5 or 10 ideas? How what's the process behind that? Do you spend a lot of time thinking of it? Just go and do one, and if you like it, do 10 more, or how does that work?
Usually it kind of comes in two ways. One, the best way is like an idea will hit me and I'll be like, oh dang, okay, I'm gonna go do that right now. And then I always do three of something.
Okay.
And I'll do them at the same time, kind of one and then next, let this one dry, next, kind of move them around a little bit. And that's the best. And then usually if I feel good about it, it turns out with, it looks like, it looks how I feel like it should. So, so that's the best way to do it. And then sometimes, and usually a lot of those ideas come from like me explaining to my kids stuff. They'll be like, like the emoji ones, my kids were like, why does he have hearts for eyes? And I was like, well, it's a symbol that show, and I was like, but that is a weird idea.
Yeah.
Like, and then that made me start thinking about where everything comes from, right? Like what, like where did the smiley face come from to begin with? And
Yeah.
it, and I kind of did, there's a couple versions of where it starts, but they hired some artists to create some type of happy environment because their office vibe was just horrible and everybody was angry. And so they just said, well, let's put this happy thing up and try to force people to be happy, and then you play that into it. And then like, I always loved it. Like every single thing in the world, the backstory of it is just horrible.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, oh, where did Nerf come from? Oh, it was tested on people during Vietnam. And, it was just like, what?
Yeah.
And so I thought, what if all these emojis came from some really shitty story?
Yeah.
And over the years, it was just became a symbol that nobody did anything twice about it. So I thought, what if they all came from people that had really sad stories?
Yeah, I think it's funny because like you actually what you're doing here is like to draw the emoji as if it was a bit more real, like just that if this guy had two hearts instead of the eyes, and you put those flesh on there, and it's like you said, or the one with the, how do you say, the zip on the mouth,
Oh, the zipper?
the zipper on the mouth,
Yeah.
it's terrible, man. It's like, and if you like, yeah, we don't question or we don't ask anything when we see the small icon, emoji right there. It's like, yeah, he doesn't have to speak, she like, shut your mouth, and you're drawing
Right.
it like a horror movie, and it's like, oh. And then after seeing your work, your emoji series, then you, or at least what I did is, okay, I went back to my WhatsApp and started looking at all the emojis, and I was saying, oh fuck, this is this is terrible,
Yeah.
like the arms, like the cat arms or whatever,
Yeah. I definitely had about 10 more I was going to do, and then just kind of life got in the way. But yeah, people would send me like, what if you did one like this? And so it got me thinking. And then, yeah. And then the funniest part was when people would Google the stories and they'd say, I can't find anything on this guy. Is he still alive? And I'm like, this is totally made up story. These people don't exist. But people were like, oh man, is that kid okay? Or
wait, oh, the emojis you're saying?
yeah, the stories that I wrote about him.
Okay, yeah.
And people would be like, I Googled him, I can't find anything about him. I was like, and I would actually like, the next day or so, I would try Googling and it would already come up as like a search, like that people like a trending search for these names. Like, gosh, they don't exist. These are all fake.
Yeah, the thing is that if social media says it's true, it's even more true than if it happened,
Yeah.
So it's there. So about these stories, I mean, but you have true stories here, right? Like the murders and stuff. Those are true stories, right?
Nope, they're all fake. I wrote them all, man.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh,
I tried to write them weird enough to where like they seemed real, but they're not.
Wow. So that's a new thing for me. I thought this was like, all very, I don't know, like classic murder stories. There are documentaries and stuff everywhere. And I thought this was like icons I don't know, from
Yeah,
the past.
that was my intention, is to make him seem like that.
Amazing. That's completely new for me. That's great, man. So at the I don't know if you still have this, but uh I'm scrolling down right now. I time ago I saw like this I think it was charcoal drawings and very traditional paintings, and I saw some I don't know if it was like cowboys paintings or something. I can't remember the subject, um, but very traditional, like nothing to do with what you're doing now. Like you were doing something else, right?
Yep. Yeah, and I really when I first started, I mean, I grew up in Wyoming, which probably doesn't mean much if you don't know the area very well, but it's very cowboy
Okay.
ranch agriculture area. I so where I grew up was a lot of really good artists and a lot of really good museums. So I just loved creating, and kind of when I first got into art, the internet wasn't that big of a deal. It wasn't a place to really find stuff, which makes me sound really old. But by the time I was in college, did I get my first cell phone? Did I get my first email? I guess I had an email account a year before that, but like all through high school, I had none of that stuff.
Yeah.
So I would go to museums and art galleries and just look. And when you're in Wyoming, you're hours away from any big city. 10 hours away from Denver, 10 hours, like I was very far away from any kind of culture. So that was all I could get. So I would see that. And that was kind of like, I would look at these Western artists and be like, God, these guys are such good artists. And I just loved technique at that time. So I really spent so much time doing that and really kind of obsessing over that stuff, and started, well, I can do my own. I know people like that look like this. I can paint them. I can do this. And when you start selling stuff, you think, okay, well, maybe this is my job. This is the dream. So I really got a good start with Western art and really successful. And then this is the lesson I learned of when you start letting money drive your choices. So I created this style. It was really kind of a bright pastel style, and was just selling them like crazy. Had like a wait list for them.
Whoa.
And I'm like, gosh, how old was I? 20, 25 at that time, selling drawings for like a pretty good amount of money that I thought, man, I'll never have to have a job. This is
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
And so I thought, gosh, if they like these pastels that really aren't they weren't technically good. They were high style. They broke all the rules as far as good art goes, but they were selling like crazy. And so I thought, gosh, if they like these, man, if I went to oils, oh man, I'd be making extra money, right?
Yeah.
And so I lost how to do that style because it was new and fresh to me, and I only did it for about a year, and then tried to migrate towards how to do oil paint really well, because if the hierarchy of the value of art is oil is always up here, and acrylics, watercolors, pastel, charcoal, as far as collectors go, it lowers. So I was being greedy, and I thought, well, I'm gonna learn how to oil paint. But I got really lucky with pastels and had that style. It was very lucky. I did not realize the road to oils was going to be, every single way. It's not A to B, it's A to all these mistakes, and then
Yeah.
you just get dropped out over in C. You're like, I guess this is what I do now. So, and then I kind of, it was hard to jump back into that world because I wanted to go back to the pastels after. I was like, man, oils are just not for me. Um, and so it was, so now I'm moving back to that world. I mean, I'll always do a little bit of that painting because it does have like a nostalgic element, and some of my favorite painters are landscape and Western artists. Like there's some that just blow my mind. So I always love them for that.
How did you, I mean, when did you change that much? I mean, from something so traditional and that you were making money from it, like how did you decide? Was it conscious decision? It was by chance that you just posted, and or like what happened in the middle, you know, because it's a completely different path you embraced, right?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the cool version is I just needed to change, man.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
the real
sure.
version is life got the best of me, and I had like several nervous breakdowns and gave up, and had kids, got divorced, got like just
Yeah,
life continues to beat me.
yeah,
So a lot of it came from like just disenfranchised, depressed, frustrated, anger, and just not filtering it anymore. Like really, I wanted, because I started my account thinking, well, there's a lot of cool artists on here. Maybe, who knows, maybe in my wildest dreams, some people would like my stuff, because I never really had an online presence. And so yeah, I think I tried it. It didn't work for a long time. I mean, I struggled to get to 200 for a long time.
wow.
Because I didn't know anything about hashtag. I didn't know
Oh
anything
yeah,
about that world, and also it was a lot of my black and white portraits of people, which I love doing, but people, and so I finally was just so frustrated with that idea that I was like, man, this sucks. Like this is kind of like everything I worked to do to learn how to render and how to create shapes and shade and edges and techniques with different tools and stuff, and nobody likes it. Like, this sucks. So it's almost like, fine, you don't like it, I don't like it either. And so I kind of just was a spoiled brat about it and said, I'm going to start making. I think at this point I may have had like 600 people.
okay.
So me being, the very immature human that I am, I said, I'm going to make sure all these people unfollow me. And so I'm just going to make ugly shit.
Yeah,
It's just not offensive in the sense of I want to hurt people's feelings, but just offensive to people's palates, right?
yeah,
And so I just started doing, uglier stuff that was really, against my technical beliefs, where I was like, gosh, these are, it feels weird sending something that isn't a fully finished, traditional, but you know what, who cares anymore? And so I just started doing stuff, and then I started playing around with different ideas. And then at this point, as we talked about earlier, I have now developed a little bit of a following. And
hmm,
so I thought, well, actually, these paintings are more fun because there's no rules to them. Whereas the traditional Western stuff, there's lots of rules. You got to get them right, or it's not going to work.
yeah,
And so it just came down to this idea of like, well, just keep going with this other stuff because it's more fun. You're not caught up with, does this look like a hand, when it doesn't matter. Who cares if it does? And so for me, I relied more on like, guttural instincts or grotesque or concepts more than technique, which I'd never done before.
okay.
I honestly felt like I was hiding the fact that I didn't have any ideas or any emotions to paint when I would just do portraits. I'm not saying every people that do that. I know I was like, gosh, I have nothing to say.
Yeah,
But I feel like I have things to say, but I don't know how to say them because I'm in such a linear, like, this nose needs to look like this nose, or it's the whole thing is off,
yeah.
right? And then I go back to, was it Jacob Lawrence, an artist, gosh, what was he, kind of mid-century American artist? He has a quote that like essentially is, if it's important, it can't be treated in paint importantly. Like,
Okay.
the more important it is, the more abstract it has to be.
Wow.
Because the more important it is, if you take it detail to detail to detail, it offers too much critique
Mm,
of like, or at least that's what I got from it. Like, if you were to do, because a lot of his paintings were, civil rights type stuff. So like, they were very serious subjects, but he painted them in a way where you don't care about the technique. You're not stuck in,
yeah.
geez, that's a weird shirt. Why did he paint it like that? You're in his world now, and his world is a simple technique tell a grand story in a simple way. And so I kind of started thinking like, well, how do you do that more? I certainly don't do that very well, but like, I want to tell a big story easily.
Yeah.
And so I started messing around more with that. And then I had an idea to try those scrape away paintings, thinking it was going to be a gimmick. I tried it. It was like 2 a.m. I had a day job, I had a night job, I had kids, little babies at the time. So I literally had 1 hour and I was like, I'm gonna do something. I'm gonna do something weird. So I did it. And just from that point on, things changed pretty, pretty significantly as far as the people loved that one. They hated the next two. And I thought, well, is this stupid? Is this gimmicky? Because I know I tread the line of like, this is a total gimmick, or is this cool?
Yeah.
So I really played that in my head of like, I don't want to be like this cheesy, the clever artist type thing where it's all about being clever and not about being interesting necessarily.
Yeah.
So I thought, all right, maybe I won't do that anymore. Well, I'll do one more. And then that one caught on, and all of a sudden other, news media people started playing it.
Yeah.
And so they blew up. And so that was interesting to have at that point, like it was weird, that, to have things featured and so many people like it. And obviously hearing people say how much they didn't like those, which whatever, who cares? But it was interesting then at that point on, it just seemed like people were talking to a different person. It was like they wanted, the dark, edgy person that they thought I was, or, it just felt like this weird social agreement of like, you should be weird and dark. And then, okay, I'll be weird and dark. And I was like, well, actually I am kind of weird. And luckily my face went paralyzed a year later. It's like, shit, now I got to hide it. So this works perfectly. So now I look like a weird, pretentious art character.
Great.
So I don't know. I'm just kind of rambling, but yeah. So like really like the big change happened because I could not keep up with life. And I just became frustrated with how it was one of those like, it's not going to work for me again, huh? God damn it, and then like, I just went with it, and I just went with, I feel I got stuck in the world of like, art is beauty and it's technique. And then I forgot that art is also ugly, and it's also angry, and it's also resentful, and it's also lonely. It's also, so I thought, I don't paint like that. I'm going to paint like who I really am, which are those things, I'm not
so it's like I was saying before, it's amazing how when you said, okay, I don't care about it anymore, I don't care about beauty, I don't care about people liking this, I don't care, I don't have time, I'm going to do, or I want to lose my followers, and things went the other way around, right? Like it's amazing how when we how you say, like we free ourselves from those society, like the correct, like the box, like how, and you're saying like you were ready to failure, right? You were going to lose all the followers and you were ready for it, and the thing changed. Like it's weird how things work, like doesn't work like we want to, it
is weird. And I think it comes back to like confidence and purpose. I don't think I had the confidence because, as we talked earlier, I was in the world of like, oh man, I can't draw the way these Russian school people can, when you see these like, holy shit, how are they doing this? I've never even heard of this person. And there's like 50 of them painting exactly, and so that was my focus. And then when my focus became like destruction and destruction of ego, and I had a very solid purpose, and I was very confident about it, because like instead of I hope you like this to I want you to hate this
Amazing. That's
is a different concept because like one is passive, one is active.
yeah.
And I think people can tell when it's passive versus active, you know. And so now when I feel like if I'm doing something that's kind of timid and, you know, I like to think, is this, am I being direct about this?
Yeah.
You know, versus maybe it's cool, I don't know, or, you know, or here's a redo of one of my old things, or, you know, which that's fine, I guess. But as far as like new styles, like, is this important enough to lose everybody for?
Yeah, I was when you were telling me about this artist, this woman that tells, or I like tells uh stories with so little, or like this concept you said, like you don't have to work a lot of detail if you want to talk about something, like not to mess
Oh,
with
right. Yeah.
the. Yeah, so I was thinking about this thing that's going on now for a few years, I guess, like memes, right?
Yeah.
And there is inside of that world that are mostly bad pictures, of a cat or whatever, or moved, pictures, or now there is like this world of very simple line drawings, or badly or poorly drawing of a cat or a dog, or again whatever. I don't have
Yeah.
more examples right now, but it's amazing how those are making a lot of noise with people, like very very, I guess you've seen some, like very very simple drawings that tell a story very short,
Yeah.
briefly. And
Yeah. I think memes, you know, we honestly, I think we're lucky to be a part of seeing from infancy to greatness what memes can do. Like,
yeah,
I mean, I'm not kidding you. That's part of the best parts of my day is
yeah.
when, like, and the nice thing is they're based off of, you know, history, and they're based off, and whether it's recent history or within the day or the month or the topic. But I love when like they're playing off of like memes from 3 years ago that are still good, and you can just do the interplay. So it's kind of this inside joke that we're all a part of, but you
Yeah,
got to keep. And so I love that idea of like, we're all in this together separately. We all think this is funny. Here's why. And it's kind of this agreed upon Reddit culture almost. But yeah, like, and that's the beauty of it, is that none of it means anything. Some of the funniest ones, you know, are the simplest or have
yeah,
been reused so many times. Like just the ends of humor have there are none with memes, because like you can just repackage them. And you know, to me it's just like I said, some of the most exciting parts of my day is when I see one that's like, oh shit, how do they do this stuff?
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
you
That's
know, I really, I had some kind of meme ideas, but other people got to it first. So you know, I think there's definitely art related stuff you can do with that, but most people have already gotten there first. So that, you know, kudos to them.
yeah, yeah. I've seen a few artists that are doing very big memes, oil, huge. Uh,
Yeah, it's cool. I like to see that, because again, when I see that, it's like, you like funny like me? We must be friends. I bet in real life we'd be friends.
yeah. And I've seen, like, now there are like galleries that are taking these pieces, of work, and they are like selling, like they are taking it seriously, it's
I mean, it really is kind of gosh, internet graffiti almost, right?
yeah,
It's almost like a secret language that's passed around culturally through a, you know, instead of on the walls or on uh, trains or anything. It is so. It is kind of, you know, modern day. You know, it would make sense for galleries to be on top of that, because it's what people are talking about. It's the culture.
yeah,
It's kind of an in group that everyone's allowed to get in with. Um,
yeah,
so yeah, it makes sense. Like, I'm surprised more people don't do it.
yeah, yeah,
You know, that's kind of why like the woke series was a joke off of that because, I'm in that age bracket where I'm far too old to be cool, but not old enough to be like,
Yeah.
respectable or anything, right?
Yeah.
So like when people would use terms and I'd reference them, I like, God, I feel so old saying this stuff. And like, but yet we all have to realize, like, what does woke mean? And, again, I had to explain it to my kids. And they're like, so it just means, and then you'd explain it. And then I thought, gosh, what would that look like? As someone that's super woke. And then another kid reference is, so my oldest was in daycare, and we talked to a friend or the daycare provider. I can't remember, a friend who was a daycare provider.
Okay.
We were like, man, our oldest, or only at that time, like really like drooled a ton. Would like drool through like a shirt. And like, is that a problem? Like, I feel like that I don't see that as much. And then she said, no, actually, the drooling kids are the most intelligent because. And I thought she was kidding, but she's like, no, because they're focused so much on the rest of the world that they don't pay attention. Their lizard brain isn't catching that, like, oh, I'm drooling, I need to fix this. They're
That's
just like,
crazy.
whatever. So when I was painting those, I thought, I'm gonna make them all drooling because these are people, the people that I picked
Yeah.
either had to be kind of like loved and hated, right?
Yeah.
Like a world of like, and especially the Ellen one now, man, that makes a little more sense. But like this world of like, how can so many people not like this person, but yet so many people do, to where now they're they're in the, the upper echelons of elite society. What do they know that we don't? And then I thought, man, it's because they're probably not paying attention to all the other shit. They're focused on everything else. So I thought, what does that look like? It looks like big bulging eyes and somebody drooling. So I thought, well, there you go. There's a style right there.
That's fantastic. Yeah. I mean, uh, it's always, I think I told you this, but it's always, when I see one of your posts, one of your paintings, the Wake series or the Woke series, and like each of, like, yeah, it's always a good news, to see one of those. It's almost, I mean, of course, it's not like a meme. I'm not trying to compare or anything, but it's like, when you see something that's funny that you don't want it to go away too fast, you wanna, and something that happens with the stories you tell and the paintings that uh have a lot of detail is that you can eat it like a nice chocolate, that you want to enjoy very slowly. So when I see one of yours, it's like, okay, let's look at it, take your time, look at the details, read, the story. It's
Oh,
like,
thank you.
for me, it's a great thing. I wish you were uploading more, man. Like, uh, I have
Oh,
to,
thank you. I
I have to
appreciate
scroll on your account, and I wish, I don't know, to see. Actually, you're selling now a book about all your work, right?
Yeah, I have always wanted to put something together, at least for myself, almost like a graphic novel type thing, just to have. And I've never had the time or energy to do it. And a company contacted me, and I was like, I mean, do I have to do any part of it? And they're like, no. I was like, cool,
Great.
let's do
Yeah. Great.
that. But it's weird to go through and like pick certain things out and be like, yeah, this is good enough for a book, or wait, there's going to be a book of this stuff. And so, the title is a kind of a joke. They're like, what should we call it? And just right away I was like, glittery shit, because that's kind of what this is, right? Like taking something, because so much of this stuff years ago, if you'd have told me, like, especially the scrape away stuff, the technique level on those is so much lower than what I was ever shooting for, that I'd have been like, these are shit paintings.
Hmm.
But the glitter is the idea around them of like, when you look at the people hanging from the tree,
Yeah.
you don't forget that the anatomy is not great, the technique is not good. You're like, wait, are they hanging or floating? And to me,
Yeah.
that's where I want to be, and not like, I believe a reflective shadow on
Yeah.
a suit. It's kind of a greenish, and you don't even have that on there.
Yeah.
And she would actually not, versus like, whoa, what's going on in this picture is
Yeah.
way more valuable to me.
Yeah.
But that's where the glittery shit comes from. Of like, it's fancy enough to where you don't realize that it's not that good.
Yeah. I love what you're saying. I mean, this about, I mean, talking about what's going on and not about the technique, because again, technique, you have to grab a few books or two 8-minute videos, and there's not much, there's not, I mean, it has a limit, it has
Yeah,
an end. But with the concept and this way you're leaving, people to complete the story, and it's always more interesting what happens in people's mind, like the horror movie when they don't show you like the beast or the killer, that you are like
yeah,
crazy thinking whatever, and once they show the alien or the, it wasn't that bad, when they show finally the shark, it's like,
right.
uh so that's, I think that's powerful. Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess again, drawing another like music parallel is it's the same thing. Like, do you want to play for other guitarists that are never going to be impressed with it anyways?
Yeah.
Like it always comes back to, can you write a good song?
Yeah.
You have a good idea for a painting, instead of like, how many people, I mean, obviously a lot of people have heard of really good technical guitarists, but with Instagram, how many guys, you'll guys and girls, people, you'll look and you're like, oh my God, you're the greatest guitarist ever. And where are you from? Oh, some small town in, Illinois, or some like, just everybody's a good guitarist, right?
Yeah.
Everybody's a good guitarist. You know, Only like Eddie Van Halen could write a good song though,
Yeah.
right? Like he was amazing for 100 reasons, but if he couldn't write good songs, people would not have heard about him like he did.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, who have you heard more, Yngwie Malmsteen or Simon and Garfunkel,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I do a lot of these parallels with music, well, because I do play, music too, and I enjoy it so much. And something I always say my students or people when we are talking about drawing and technique, and if we have to put details everywhere, like the parallel I do is, and I usually use John Mayer. And like John Mayer has a great technique, but he has a very like I know, I'm sure you know him, and like this finger picking style, like he knows how to choose a note. So what I love about uh, a guitar solo of him, or music, or a guitar solo in general, is when you hear a solo, you want to hear the solo here, and you want to see that the musician can, if he wanted to, or he can be here, but he decides, or she again, like to be here, and shows a
Yeah,
little bit and goes back, and that's something I like, dynamics, and that's
right.
something I try to tell my students with the drawing and the paintings, like, don't define and put details everywhere, because people get tired of seeing details. Like, it's not fun, you wanna keep the eye, working and seeing something very abstract here, and some detail, like show you what you can do somewhere, not everywhere, you know
Yeah,
and it's the same with Malmsteen, like, you don't want to hear a solo right up there all the time, because you get used to it and it's just noise, like like there's I don't know,
yeah.
at least
I
that's
know. I always feel bad for those guys that have these videos where they're just like playing scales and and I'm like, that is so impressive, but I could not listen to that for more than 11
yeah.
seconds.
Yeah.
Like that is, it's as impressive as it is completely annoying, but good
Yeah.
job, dude.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it really is. It's not the notes you play, it's the notes you leave out, right?
Yeah.
It's why
Absolutely.
did you leave
Yeah.
them out? Why did you, because it's supposed to feel like a conversation.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of techniques should feel like that. It should feel like, here's a really heavy area, and then I'm going to take a big, because your eye needs a break,
Yeah.
like to see canvas, your eyes like, oh, okay, that makes my eye move to this next thing. So like
Yeah.
having lefts makes your eye go around versus like, okay, there's just a lot of shit here. Oh my gosh. But
Yeah.
if you're like, what's going on here? You can take your eye on a little journey if you've got, little clusters of movement happening.
Yeah, another example with guitar is like when you play a solo, like try to think, like you said, like you are talking. Of course, this conversation thing, like one phrase and then answer that phrase. But there's another thing that is to play as if you were talking, and as if you would need to breathe, like to breathe. So you have to stop, take air, and then say something again. But not, you can't be speaking like all the time, saying things in the
Right,
same
right.
tone, like a
That's
conversation.
a good way to put it. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, you have to stress some things. And this has to be has to do with contrast, you know like this very cliche phrase that is something like uh, sweet ain't that sweet without the bitter. You know that
Oh, right. Okay.
uh, like if you don't know bitter, or if you don't know silence,
Yeah.
uh, the contrast in the same piece of music or painting or drawing is what makes uh, you know it makes it work, and it one reinforces the other, like
Yeah.
the silence gives strength to
Yeah. You
whatever.
don't know what a straight line looks like until you see a crooked one, right?
Yeah, yeah. There are a lot of phrases I still have to learn. Uh, but yeah, it's so interesting. So okay, man. So we have an hour here. So I wanted to ask you like one brief last question. Uh, like what would have been like the advice uh you wanted to, or you would needed to have, where you when you were starting painting or drawing, or whenever, like uh there's something you like you would need to hear, like whatever.
I think it comes down to probably two things. One is in every part of my life is if I could have heard and really digested to completely be yourself unapologetically,
Mm,
100 miles an hour yourself, I should have done that years ago
mm,
instead of wanting to be everybody else. Because I wanted to be a copycat of everybody else, but I didn't realize the value of being yourself. Because I think, in the art world, it's easy to kind of be selfless or not focus on yourself because it looks arrogant or conceited, or but it's not that. I wish I'd learned that or understood that years ago. Is just do your own thing, like tell your story, but not, find a way to tell your story in the way that makes sense for you. If you're a weird person, tell a weird story. Like don't hide behind it. Don't. And then I guess the other piece, this one's just advice for me that I use for. It doesn't always work for somebody, but with I never liked relying on art by myself as far as a financial thing,
mm,
because to me it puts too much pressure on creating the same thing that people like, to where, you know, whether I can live on art alone, I don't act like it, or I don't let that influence me. Of like, could art pay all my bills? I don't let that come into play. Because I don't want to be in a spot like where, with coronavirus, like shit, when people are nervous and scared about the future, you're going to buy things you need, and art isn't anything you need.
yeah.
It's a great thing to own if you can, and it's fulfilling in many ways. But when things get serious, I've seen it before. People get nervous and they pull it, and then you're like, great, now I can't do that. I'm not allowed to do art as much now because I've got to do this other, whatever. So to me, it made sense to have something else secured to where I didn't have to worry about my audience.
Mm.
Where if I was like, if I'm living off of my art specifically, I'm going to make way less choices. Then you really have to watch your likes and your followers and like, oh shit, they didn't like that. That actually means something to me now. It means I might not be able to pay rent this month if they don't buy this because they don't like this style. Whereas if I had another job, and I'm the worst of all humans with everything, right? So like, if I've got a ton of time to do something, I will obviously wait till the very last second to do it. Versus if my schedule is full, I have to force it in. So again, it's that passive versus active.
Yeah.
If I'm like, because I've had years where I'm just like, I'll just do art this year, and like, I get nothing done.
Yeah.
It's enough to survive. And then I've had other years where it's like, okay, art's third on the plate, and that's the years that I just maximum capacity, like I can just kick out as much as I possibly can because I force it in my life. Like, okay, I've got 2 hours tonight to do that. I better do something. I can't just mess around and like, I got to go straight for something important because I only have important time left, which also puts pressure on you. It can burn you out, but like, it's better to do it that way than like, man, I got all day to do this.
Yeah.
I could watch Tiger King again. That's fun. And then
Yeah.
you're like, shit, I wasted the whole day. Well, I'll get to it tomorrow.
Yeah.
So that's me, like in every part of my life. So it's best for me to treat it, put it in a time slot that's important, or I'll just squander the time away and just be a loser with it.
Amazing, man. So this is much more than I expected. A lot of information here, a lot of things to think about. I will probably listen to this again.
Thanks, man.
And
Yeah, this
yeah,
was fun.
yeah, it was again a big pleasure. And for me, it's always great not to keep and maintain the like the connection only by chatting on Instagram, which for me is, I'm not going to say it's nothing because we would not be here, but it's
Right.
always better to get to hear you, and always more interesting. I think people will love this. um I'm sure about it. And again, thank you so much for
Yeah, thank you,
spending.
man. I had a lot of fun. I appreciate you reaching out.
Yeah, thank you so much, and let's keep in touch.
Sounds good, man.
Okay, big hug, take care, and we'll talk later.
All right, man. Sounds
Bye,
good.
man.
See ya.